Hello YouTube. Although some of what I will tell you took place over 100 years ago, most of the files of the Soviet secret police are still out of reach, classified and concealed, regardless of the fact that USSR is no more, and its mysteries may have value for any government of Russia, past or present. For a long time on the Kola Peninsula, in the Arkhangelsk region, in the northern Urals and in Siberia, people sometimes suffered from diseases of unknown nature, myriachenia and hiccups. Medicine cannot explain the cause of these diseases and does not know how to treat them. The priests believe that the person suffering from myriachenia or hiccups is infused by a certain entity, perhaps even demons. It is here, in this frozen, desolate, wild land where myriachenia exists, a mysterious disease in which people become zombie-like, and after the attack do not remember what happened to them. Another name for myriachenia is the call of the polar star, or Arctic hysteria. It affects not only natives but also newcomers. This specific condition is like mass psychosis, usually manifested during the celebration of shamanic rites, but sometimes it can occur completely spontaneously. During the attack of the disease, the afflicted person falls into a trance, making rhythmic movements and makes inarticulate sounds, as if obeying a call that is unheard by others. He or she rushes north towards the North Star. If other people try to stop him, he goes on a rampage, resists, and showing superhuman strength, breaks away and rushes to his last fatal path. According to legends, the souls of dead people fly to the heavenly palace, over which the polar star shines, and the aurora borealis, the windows of this palace open, and from there the gods call to them the souls of still living people. And he who hears this call goes to the North Star. The name from the disease comes from the Yakut word manerik, to do strange things. There are cases when the disease took a mass character. For example, in 1870, about 70 people of the lower Kolyma Kazakh detachment, to the horror of the local doctor, began to sing with strange voices in unknown languages during the strange attacks. According to the researchers, the northern shamans can enter into a state of myriachenia. A large number of people using this shriek for invocation, this shriek or cry, frighten people, and they, like slaves, obeyed any command of the one who sent the disease on them. The locals knew that only a shaman could cure a sick person, but in order to compete with the call of the North Star, one needs to have huge magic power. So the phenomenon of myriachenia interested academician Vladimir Bekhterev. Vladimir Mikhailovich Bekhterev, who lived from 1857 to 1927, was a Russian neurologist, psychiatrist, and psychologist. Founder of a scientific school, he published a large number of fundamental works on the anatomy, physiology, and pathology of the nervous system. He was engaged in research of the therapeutic use of hypnosis, including alcoholism. Bekhterev studied personality on the basis of comprehensive research of the brain using physiological, anatomical, and psychological methods. Since 1918, the Brain Institute, under the leadership of the academician, has been searching for a scientific explanation of the phenomena of telepathy, telekinetics, and hypnosis. Bekhterev himself conducted a series of studies of telepathy in experience on humans and animals, along with clinical research at the Brain Institute. Methods of electrophysiology, neurochemistry, biophysics, and physical chemistry were used. He died suddenly on December 24, 1927 in Moscow. Bekhteryov's brain was preserved in the pantheon of the brain of the great people, and his body was cremated, and his ashes were buried at the Volkovsky Cemetery in Leningrad. In Moscow, the medical community spread a rumor that Bekhteryov's death was due to the fact that after a meeting with Stalin, Soviet dictator, to whom Bekhteryov provided medical advice, he recklessly told that Stalin, in his opinion, was suffering from paranoia. The Brain Institute in Petrograd, later called Leningrad, but actually St. Petersburg, which Bekhteryov headed, in 1921, organized an expedition to the Kola Peninsula, where a mysterious disease was raging. This expedition was under the leadership of Alexander Borchenko, a scientist, an adventurer, a writer, a lecturer, and a very outstanding individual, whose exploits I described in some other videos of mine. Professor Borchenko was an occultist, a mystic, who experimented in the field of human paranormal abilities. He wrote essays on the transmission of thought at a distance, experiments with brain rays, and expressed his teachings based on the ancient science of the universe in the book titled Dunher. In Lapland, Borchenko found the remains of prehistoric religious center at the sacred lake Seyd Ozero. Lapland is a region of northern Europe, largely within the Arctic Circle, stretching across northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and into the Kola Peninsula of Russia. It is bounded by the Norwegian Sea on the west, the Barents Sea on the north, and the White Sea on the east. And if you look at my videos about USOs and other strange phenomena, there's quite a lot of it in the area. Whether connected or not, time will say. Lavozero is located in the heart of the Kola Peninsula and stretches from north to south. Around it is tundra, swampland, taiga, and in some places hills. In the winter, all there is a dead and icy polar night. The sun never sets in the summer. Life is warm only in the small villages and camps where the Sami people live. They fish and raise deer. In the village of Lavozero, Borchenko wanted to negotiate with the shamans about visiting a ritual place, an island called Rogovoy, but he was refused. When trying to get there, despite the ban of the local shamans, the expedition almost perished. When they returned, they found a yellow stone column on the shore of the lake. Around that statue, people were possessed of instinctive horror, and one by one they fell into myriachenia. Borchenko established that this phenomenon is a directed mass psychosis of unknown origin. The causes of its occurrences are still unknown. I want to remind my audience that Borchenko was executed during the Stalin purges, that his research files were confiscated, and when his ancestors tried to recover them, his descendants tried to recover them from the now Russian state, after the USSR was gone, they were cautioned that the Ministry of the Internal Affairs has interest to keep the files where they are now. Some years after the expedition, Borchenko headed a special laboratory of the OGPU and KVD, or as we better know it, KGB, and worked with healers, shamans, and mediums. However, his attempts to study the phenomenon of myriachenia were not successful, as far as the Russian public knows today. The results of the expeditions were classified, and the participants were arrested and shot. And then the secret police investigators involved in the investigation were shot also. So what did the Borchenko expedition find that does not allow removing of the top secrecy label from the archives to this day? Before I continue, it is imperative to remind my audience that Nazi Germany did their best to conquer the Soviet Arctic Peninsula. They were interested in more than its natural resources. The Soviet Arctic territories were infested with Nazi spies and saboteurs, and Stalin's friendly relationship with Germany prior to 1941 are to blame for that too. Nazi scientists of the occult wanted to get their hands on the peninsula's secrets as well. And by the way, in the 1930s, German psychiatrist Schwartz found out that flashes of red color of a certain frequency can cause people to have epileptic seizures. And in 1957, it was discovered that some forms of aurora borealis and their frequencies are close to the main rhythms of the human brain. Now, in the Russian north, it is believed that in ancient times, sorcerers grew on the remains of foods or drinks a certain entity that looks like mold. It was placed in kvass, morse, or beer and allowed to drink the victim, settling the entity this way into hiccups. Such cases are not really rare even today. Kvass, for those who do not know, is a traditional fermented Slavic drink commonly made from rye bread or black bread. Morse is a non-carbonated Russian fruit drink prepared from berries, mainly from lingonberry and cranberry, although sometimes blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, or sea buckthorn. We use a lot of sea buckthorn in Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe. It is made by boiling berries with sugar or just mixing pure juice with sweetened water. A sign of the disease is a constant, stubborn hiccup. Once in a person, the entity could take on different forms: a devil, a frog, an insect, or even another person who settled in the sick person's stomach. He or she was happy to tell the victim his name, usually a human one, and liked to describe his appearance through the mouth of the one he possessed and lived in it for years. There are three types of this strange mental illness. With the so-called mute type, patients not only hiccup but also yawn, they have tears and shake their limbs. Roaring hiccups are accompanied by a spasm of the larynx, and the voice of the person changes beyond recognition. When person is talking, a prolonged hiccup is accompanied by shouting words and phrases, and its carriers could find missing things and predict the future. Hiccups are known by Karelians, Mordvins, Vyachit, Permians, and other northern ethnicities in Russia. Now, this entity could lead its host in silence for years, forcing him or her to perform uncharacteristic actions and control his entire life. The entity spoke up when those around were going to banish it. By the way, demon or whatever it was knew when his victim was due to die, and it decided whether to live with the person or move to their relative or friends. It was believed that if a dead person suffering from hiccups was crossed, the entity ceased to exist. So we're getting into localized treatments, I guess. Sergei Ivanovich Mickiewicz, a Bolshevik, a communist, and certainly an atheist who served in the exile in the Kolyma region, one of the researchers of this phenomenon described a typical seizure in a Yakut woman. The mind becomes confused, frightening hallucinations appear. The patient sees a devil, a terrible person, or something similar, begins to scream, sing, beat her head rhythmically against the wall, or shake it from side to side, tearing out her hair. Myriachenia can last from 1 to 2 hours to the whole day or night and repeat for several days. According to that scientist, there are various stories about the maneriks among the population. For example, that they can pierce themselves through with knives, and this does not leave traces. They can swim without being able to swim in their normal state. They sing in unfamiliar language, predict the future, and so on. The possessed spirit is in many ways similar to the shaman and has the power and abilities of a shaman, which is undoubtedly related to myriachenia and shamanism. The difference between them consists only in the fact that manerik is infused into the patient against his or her will, and the shaman invokes the spirit on their own and can command them, those spirits. Interestingly, among Russian peasants, particularly among the mystical sects, existed a similar disease, which people usually called klikushество. It's like a sort of hysteria. Russian scientists, including Bekhterev, drew attention to it at the end of the 19th century. In 1785, by the way, Bishop Veniamin of Arkhangelsk and Kholmogor wrote to the Church Council of Russia that this was a special type of corruption and possession by an evil spirit. He attributed this disease to the pagan beliefs of the local population, inherited from the ancient people who lived in this area. The white-eyed chud who possessed paranormal abilities. As I described to my audience before in other videos, the chud people of the Urals, according to legends, were an advanced race that disappeared in the bowels of the mountains. I will share some more of my research in future videos. It's a fascinating topic. The belief that the hiccups were caused by sorcerers, well, it led to a popular riot in 1862, and the mob burned their homes. The people were pacified only with the help of the troops and clergy. This phenomenon most often occurred in the villages of the Arkhangelsk region, and pregnant women were most susceptible to it. The disease, which appeared in one of the residents for a few days, well, it covered the entire village. Its symptoms could disappear in a few weeks, but return in a year or two. Medical scientists believe that the cause of the disease is oxygen starvation of brain cells and the lack, or conversely, an excess of iodine, vitamin B, calcium, or zinc. They consider hiccups a phenomenon of mental infection and refer to obsessive psychosis or sluggish schizophrenia. They, scientists, offer to treat it with hypnosis, but no one has ever been cured in this way. And the mysterious entity got into an argument with the doctors and gave out such details of their personal lives that they were confused. the entity that is inside the person that they were trying to treat. At the same time, it was openly glad of their confusion. One sorcerer healer managed to find out the recipe for a remedy that allegedly helps to avoid the settlement of the spirit devil. That's how it's translated. This herbal decoction of Russian herb teletaika, Pyrola uniflora in Latin, thistle, and starodubka, or Adonis vemalis in Latin. Leaves of teletaika are poisonous and contain a neurotoxin that helps for many diseases. The very word thistle, carduus in Latin, in Russian is chertopoloch, or scare the devil. It corresponds to the name of the plant. It is used in medicine for nervous and mental problems with inhibition of the cerebral cortex. Starodubka is also a poisonous plant, but in certain doses it is used in the treatment of epilepsy. For protection from penetration and hiccups into the body, healers recommended prayers, charms, and in the form of a pinch of salt or pepper. Russian all believers, now those who practice Eastern Orthodox Christian beliefs differently from the Russian state church and paid a very heavy price for their conduct. While they, in their hideaway spaces, treated the damaged with the disease described above, using cruel methods. They starved, beat, poured water on the damaged ones in the cold, and frightened them with chain bears and dogs. People who survived this treatment, well, apparently they recovered. Over the centuries of living with the hiccups, people have learned its disease's habits. It likes the dark, does not take food that has been crossed, and drinks red wine. It does not eat honey, does not like vodka and garlic, onions and peppers, horseradish and radishes. Capricious mold does not tolerate prayer. It does not like red clothes and underwear. Women used fabrics that they didn't like, and if hiccups still appeared, it was removed in this way. A sick person was assigned a strict fast and was given charmed water to drink. After a week, the patient began to vomit violently and vomited something that looked like a kombucha or tea mushroom. It should have been burned and the ashes buried. After this procedure, no one could conjure a person for 3 years. But back to the scientist adventurer. Barchenko stayed in the north without leaving for about 2 years. He worked at a biological station in Murmansk, where he studied seaweed for use as a feed for cattle and small animals. He worked on the extraction of agar-agar from red algae. He gave lectures in which he fervently promoted the human consumption of seaweed. He was a very progressive person in his outlook. In addition, he was engaged in local history as the head of the Murmansk Marine Institute of Local History. He studied the past of the region, life and beliefs of the Saami, or Lopari people. This was part of the preparation for the expedition he had long planned to the depths of the Kola Peninsula. I will keep my word given to some Sami people in 2009. I will not go into the geographical details. It is not necessary. And it's not safe to go there for foreigners too, because the area is very heavily militarized, Kola Peninsula. Anyway, I described the strange Arctic disease. Let me add this. The members of the Lapland expedition returned to Petrograd in the late autumn of 1922. It was on November 29 of that year that scientist Alexander Koniain, member of the expedition, delivered a report on the results of his trip entitled "In the Land of Fairy Tales and Wizards," at a meeting of the geographical section of the society titled World Studies. In it, he told about the amazing discoveries made by the expedition, which in his opinion indicate that the local Lapps or Saami are descended from some older cultural race. But what do the Western people know? English Dr. Watson, participating in a number of polar expeditions, encountered a strange mental illness that could suddenly occur in several people at once. People at the same time seemed to disconnect from the surrounding world, began to make rhythmic movements, and sometimes move strictly in the direction of the north. When you try to hold them, they start to run amok. Watson called it polar or expedition rabies. For the sake of fairness, it should be noted that this disease has long been known to the residents of the north. Among the Russian population of the north, it is called Myrachenia. And among the Eskimos, I found out the call of the polar star. So as you can see, cultural cross-reference was all over the north. A famous explorer Amundsen is familiar with this disease. In 1898, his ship remained for the winter of Antarctica. That's when he had to deal with the cases of severe mental disorders of several members of the expedition. One of them, a young Norwegian named Tollefsen, heard the call of the North Star and jumped over the side and ran into the snowy desert. Another sailor, trying to calm him down, almost killed Amundsen with an axe. I will also add that during the expedition, Borchenko learned from the local shaman how in antiquity Saami were fighting the Chud people. They defeated Chud, literally escaped underground. Here it should be noted that the Russian North has long attracted the attention of Borchenko. In the novel of Darkness, he told an ancient legend about the tribe of Chud pushed underground in the bowels of the north, where Finns took control of the territory. Since then, the underground Chud lives invisibly, and before trouble or misfortune comes to earth, and appears in caves on the border between the Olonets province and Finland. There is so much more to tell about the strange discoveries made by those who study Russia's caves, tunnels, and I already described some. More in my future videos. If you can support my work, please see the links in the description of this video. Again, thank you for your attention and stay tuned for more.